Hi everyone, it's your sewing buddy Lauren. Today I'm making the bone casings and binding for my 19 teens corset. So that means I'm going to have to trim this cabbage off of this fabric, but first let me take you on a little ride because the fabric was caught around the leg of my tripod, so hope that was fun for you. Anyway, you may have noticed that it's Wednesday, not Monday. That's because I got this footage on Monday and then failed to do the voiceover because I was wrapped up in an episode of Critical Role and couldn't bring myself to push that pause button. And then my husband was home, and I don't really like recording when he's in the house because I don't want him to feel like he has to be quiet. The first thing that I need to do here is trim off all of this cabbage. So what I'm doing is folding so that the edges on the fabric line up, and then lay that out, trying to keep it nice and neat. That way I at least get close to a good square edge. And I am trimming closer to those trimmings rather than straight on the fold because I have strong faith in myself. Much stronger, it turns out, than I ought to have. As you can see, as I get closer to you, the scissors do get closer to the fold. So that will possibly come into play later. Anyway, toss that cabbage aside, and then I'm ready to cut my boning channel. That one's going to be on the straight grain, as opposed to bias, because you don't want to, bias cut your bone channels. You want those to be good and strong. And I am going to use my boning as a bit of a guide, although it turns out that I should just have used a straight edge and drawn a line, but so far it is working out. So starting where that was, cutting very carefully, trying to get a good straight line there. Once again, getting closer to that edge as I get closer to you. Such is life. Speaking of life, we finally got another person hired at my job, which means that I do get my 3 days of work every week and 4 days off, which means I get to do more sewing. That might mean more videos, or at least more regular videos. And so everyone wins there. So now that that is cut, I'm going to pull that cabbage off because I noticed there was a nice big piece toward the fold, and that will work out for creating bias tape. And that's what I'm going to be using for my binding on my corset. So first off, I have to square this, which is a little bit of a mess, but once I get the rest of that cabbage out of the way, it should be a piece of cake. The new woman we have at work is from Switzerland. She's having some difficulty with the technology aspects of the job, but her fashion sense is amazing. And she really has the will and desire to do well, be active, earn her keep, which is not always the case. And I've just noticed that bookends that has apparently been in the past few videos, that sweet little girl leaning against the log there, that it was part of a set. The other one got thrown away once because it was on my floor when my dad was on a clean your room tirade and threw everything away that wasn't where it belonged. But I still have her. She's been with me since I was like 5, I think. So I don't have a name for her. I rarely use her as a bookend. She's more just a decorative piece. But she's very sweet there singing with her little bluebird. So now I'm just double checking my work to make sure I do have an actual square. And it turns out that it is a little bit off. So I'm just going to trim that edge once I have it folded properly. And that will give me at least close to a good true square. This is a method for cutting bias tape that I think came from a Pinterest board or something. Essentially, you create the square and then you cut along the diagonal. And then once you have those, you flip one edge over and then you sew along that straight seam and create sort of a lopsided diamond shape. I'll show you in a minute. But this way you get a good continuous string of bias tape instead of trying to piece it together as you go. Another interesting development at work is that I'm now in charge of the social media aspect of Manaz. So if you would like to see the latest fashions coming in from Paris and other parts of Europe, follow at Manaz Boutique. That's at MANAZBOTIQUE. And I'll put that on the screen here as well. And you can see I've sewn along that edge now, and I'm marking out where I will need to cut. I just finger press that seam down. This material takes very well to a finger press. I haven't had to pull out my ironing board. I should, but I'm also lazy. I'm just marking 2-inch lines with my nice straight ruler. Unfortunately, this ruler has had a fatality. In closing this video, I kneeled upon it and split it quite squarely in two. R.I.P. ruler, you served me well. You came from Daiso though, so I'm not too upset about it. I can get another one there. I'm just upset that it was very cute and pink, and that's part of why I got that specific style. That reminds me though, if you would like to follow me on Instagram, it's at Dalareyan, DALAREYN, and again, I'll put that on the screen and both of these in the description. Mostly what you'll see there is costuming photos. I am doing the hashtag fall for costume from Red Threaded. So, so far we have 23 days now of various costuming photos and other things that fit the themes for the day. And that does get me into the habit of posting on Instagram daily, which is always good. You can see I have a little bit of edge left over there. So that's going to be trimmed off before I square this up. And then I just need to continue those lines through, and that way when I sew it into a tube shape, it's all nice and easy to see where the lines continue through from seam to seam. And you may be curious as to why I cut my fabric on the floor in this narrow space as opposed to, say, on a table. Well, we have a one-bedroom apartment. There is a dining room table that I could use for this, but I'm trying to keep it so that all of my sewing things are in my half of the living room. We've sort of got it split up. I've got my half, Jody has his half. His desk is actually on the back side of this couch next to me, so we can both face the TV. He has this nice comfy computer chair to watch in. I have the couch. He joins me on the couch sometimes. But essentially, this is my space, and I make it work for me. It's just wide enough normally for me to lay out the fabric. It's sometimes not quite long enough, but that's partly because I have a lot of stuff still in front of my desk. I keep trying to clear that out so that I can use my desk as a desk, but then I wind up putting more things over there. So that is a project to come, to clear that space so I have access to my computer again, which I haven't touched in months. But that's the way it goes, because phones have really replaced the computer in most senses. Like, all of my editing, my voiceover, my recording, that's all done on my phone. I use UCut Video Editor. It's a free program, so it does what I need it to do. I can trim things, splice them together. Not super fancy, but gets the job done. And it goes without saying, this video is in no way sponsored. These are just things that I use that I'm mentioning. So I've made it to the other end, and you can see again where it would need to be trimmed before I sew them together. I just need to now mark out the other side of the lines, and then I'll be good to go. My hair looks scraggly in a lot of these videos because I do my recording just after I shower for the day. It's sort of become my Monday ritual. I get up, have my coffee, go take a shower, wash my hair, get dressed, and then come start sewing and recording. And usually after that, I will do the voiceover. However, once again, that didn't happen on this Monday. I had an interesting interaction with a friend last night. They had posted about how they were having trouble with budgeting, and something that I've enjoyed doing in the past when money was tight was putting together that budget sheet and figuring out, okay, we could spend this much every day and still make it work. And so I created that for this friend, and they like immediately felt better just having that. And it's not difficult, but it is the first time I've actually digitized it. Normally I just do it on graph paper. But that was a fun experience for me. So if anyone needs a budget sheet, like, hit me up, because now that I have it digitized, I can just change some fields around and make it work for you. So the next step here is to fold it over. You want to have it offset so that there's one full strip that isn't attached in the seam. Oh, and I found a line that I hadn't continued quite all the way through. So yeah, you want to have the lines line up about your seam allowance down from the edge, but leave that overhang so that you have one full row that isn't part of the seam, if that makes any sense at all. I think it'll make more sense once it's actually sewn together. So what I'm doing is pinning at around my seam allowance, making sure that the lines that I've drawn make a nice little X right where I'm putting the pin in. That will tell me that once it's folded out, I will have a nice straight line to cut. So back to budget talk. This isn't meant to talk down at anyone, but I don't understand how people can have issues budgeting. Like, if you know what bills you have each month, you start with that as your base and then figure out what money you have coming in, subtract the two, the rest is what you have to work with. And I understand for a lot of people that's not a lot. So then that's where the budget comes in. You have to figure out, okay, I can spend this much every day. If I go beyond that, then that means I have to be super tight for the rest of the month, or until really for the rest of the month. And that's, I know in some cases that's an impossible amount, like you're looking at negative money at that point. That's a different issue. It's the people who, oh no, lol, I went overdrawn because I bought all of my makeup this month. Ha ha ha. I'm so bad with money. Like, if you just check your bank before you decide to do something like that, then you can know, hey, maybe I can hold off on these 5 different colors of eyeshadow. Anyway, that aside, here I am trimming the excess from the edges. I am leaving this attached right now because that does continue through into the line for the next, or first row, I suppose. And from here, it's just spiral cut all the way around. I don't know how interesting that is to watch for all of you, but you should be doing your own craft anyway. And it does get a little bit tricky at the seams. Even with pinning the way that I did, it was maybe a couple of millimeters over, so I just had to kick it over, even it out. It'll still look fine as the binding on the corset. And this is probably way more than I need, but then I already have white binding cut up for my next project. Honestly, I don't need it for any of my upcoming projects, but you never know. In any case, I'm about out of things to talk about for this week. Again, Instagram at Manaz Boutique, at Dallarayan. And if you need a budget spreadsheet and feel like that could help you keep track of money better, hit me up and I will share you a nice clean copy. I hope that you've created something wonderful while you were listening to me. I want to hear all about it in the comments. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. There's a bell, I guess, you can ring too, and I will talk to you next week. Go make beautiful things.